Poor black boy loads cargo hold, unaware the airline pilot is his father. The rain hammered against the tarmac like bullets, each drop exploding into 1,000 smaller fragments as Marcus Thompson heaved another piece of luggage into the belly of Flight 447. His muscles screamed in protest, 18 years old, and already feeling twice that age from the relentless grind of minimum-wage labor at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Through the sheets of water cascading off the aircraft's metal skin, he could see the cockpit windows glowing like eyes in the darkness, and behind them, a silhouette that would change everything he thought he knew about himself. But Marcus didn't know that yet. All he knew was that his supervisor, Ray, was screaming at him to move faster, that his mother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves, and that somewhere in this storm, destiny was clearing its throat, preparing to speak. "Thompson, you planning to grow roots out there?" Ray's voice cut through the thunder, sharp as broken glass. The older man stood in the cargo hold's entrance, his bulk blocking what little light filtered through from the terminal. Ray had worked these ramps for 30 years, had seen 1,000 kids like Marcus come and go, most of them ground down by the work until they either quit or became bitter shadows of themselves. Marcus grabbed another suitcase, this one heavier than it looked, designer leather that probably cost more than he made in a month. The rain had soaked through his reflective vest, through his uniform, right down to his skin. Every movement sent rivulets of water streaming down his face, blurring his vision. "I'm moving as fast as I can," he called back, though he knew it wouldn't satisfy Ray. Nothing ever did. The truth was, Marcus had been moving as fast as he could his entire life. Moving from one cramped apartment to another when his mother couldn't make rent. Moving between schools when the neighborhoods got too rough. Moving through odd jobs since he was 14, trying to help keep the lights on while his mother worked double shifts at the hospital where she was, ironically, too poor to afford the treatments she needed for her failing kidneys. Life had been one long sprint toward a finish line that kept moving further away. Now perhaps it's time to share something with you, the person listening to this story unfold. If you're finding yourself drawn in, wondering where this tale of struggle and revelation will lead, consider subscribing to hear more stories that touch the heart and challenge our assumptions about the world around us. Because sometimes, the most profound truths hide in the most unexpected places, like a cargo hold on a rainy Chicago night. As Marcus loaded the last of the priority bags, he noticed something unusual. A leather satchel, worn and weathered, had fallen from the conveyor. It bore the initials CAT, embossed in gold that had long since lost its shine. The bag felt different somehow, heavier with significance than its actual weight suggested. Marcus hesitated, then carefully placed it with the others, unaware that those 3 letters would soon take on a meaning that would shake the foundation of his world. 5 minutes to pushback, the announcement crackled through the rain, and Marcus quickened his pace. The pilots would be completing their pre-flight checks now, running through procedures that were as foreign to him as a different language. He'd watched them sometimes, these men and women in their crisp uniforms, walking through the terminal with a confidence he couldn't imagine possessing. They lived in a different world, one where people flew above the clouds instead of loading bags in the rain below them. Captain Charles Anthony Thompson, those were the initials on the bag, though Marcus couldn't have known it, sat in the cockpit of Flight 447, his hands moving across the instruments with practiced precision. At 55, he had logged over 20,000 hours in the air, had seen sunrises from above the Atlantic and sunsets painting the Pacific gold. But tonight, something felt different. Maybe it was the storm, unusual for October, or maybe it was the dream he'd had the night before, a dream about a woman he hadn't thought of in 18 years, a woman whose face still visited him in the quiet moments between sleep and waking. "Tower, this is American 447, ready for pushback," Charles spoke into his headset, his voice carrying the authority of decades in the captain's seat. Beside him, First Officer James Martinez ran through the final items on the checklist. They'd flown together for 3 years now, long enough for Charles to trust him implicitly, though not long enough for James to stop wondering about the shadows that sometimes crossed his captain's face. "American 447, you're cleared for pushback. Weather's rough out there tonight, Captain. Wind shear advisories in effect." "Copy that, Tower. We'll keep her steady." Charles allowed himself a small smile. He'd flown through worse, much worse. There was that night over the Rockies in '98 when an engine had failed and he'd had to limp into Denver on one engine and a prayer. or the microburst in Dallas that had tried to slam them into the runway like God's own fist. He'd survived them all, carrying hundreds of souls safely through the storm each time. It was what he did, who he was. The only identity he'd allowed himself for almost 2 decades. Down on the tarmac, Marcus secured the cargo door and gave the all-clear signal. The pushback tug began its work, slowly guiding the massive aircraft away from the gate. He stood for a moment, rain streaming down his face, watching the plane's navigation lights blink in the darkness. In a few minutes it would be airborne, carrying its passengers toward whatever destinations awaited them. Business travelers heading home, families starting vacations. Lives intersecting for a few hours before diverging again. Strangers who would never know how close they'd come to each other's stories. Marcus turned to head back to the terminal, already thinking about the next flight, the next load of bags, the endless cycle that paid barely enough to keep his mother's medications coming. That's when he saw it, a wallet on the ground where the aircraft had been parked. The rain had washed it clean, and even in the dim light he could see it was expensive. Real leather, the kind that aged rather than wore out. He picked it up, planning to turn it into lost and found, but something made him flip it open. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something else, some force that guides us toward moments of truth whether we're ready for them or not. Inside, protected by plastic, was a pilot's license. Captain Charles Anthony Thompson, it read. The photo showed a black man with graying temples and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of unspoken stories. But it was the other photo that made Marcus's world tilt on its axis. Tucked behind a credit card was a faded picture of a woman. Young, beautiful, with a smile that could light up the darkest night. Marcus knew that smile. He'd seen it every morning for 18 years, though lately it had been dimmed by pain and worry. It was his mother, Denise, probably 20 years younger, standing in front of what looked like the very terminal where Marcus now worked. His hands shook as he held the wallet, rain mixing with something else on his face now. It couldn't be. It had to be some cosmic coincidence, some trick of the light and his tired mind. But the evidence was there in his trembling hands. His mother had known this pilot, had known him well enough to have her picture in his wallet all these years later. "Thompson, what the hell are you doing?" Ray's voice crashed through his thoughts like a freight train. "We've got 3 more flights coming in. You planning to stand there all night like a scarecrow?" Marcus shoved the wallet into his pocket, his mind racing. "Sorry, Ray, I'm coming." But his legs felt like they belonged to someone else as he walked back toward the terminal. Everything looked different now, as if someone had adjusted the contrast on the world. The lights seemed brighter, the shadows deeper, and somewhere in his chest, a question was forming that he wasn't sure he wanted answered. Inside the terminal, the lost and found office was closed for the night. Marcus stood outside it, the wallet burning like a coal in his pocket. He should leave it in the drop box, should walk away and pretend he'd never seen it. But he couldn't. Not when his mother's younger face smiled at him from that photograph. Not when answers to questions he'd never dared ask might be within reach. He pulled out his phone, fingers fumbling with the wet screen. His mother would be awake. She rarely slept well these days between the pain and the worry. The phone rang once, twice, and then her voice, tired but warm as always. "Marcus, is everything okay? You're not hurt, are you?" "I'm fine, Mom." He paused, not sure how to frame the question. "Mom, did you ever know a pilot named Charles Thompson?" The silence on the other end stretched out like an airport runway. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller than he'd ever heard it. "Why are you asking me that?" "Mom, please, I need to know." Another pause and then a sigh that seemed to carry 18 years of hidden weight. "Come home, baby. Come home and we'll talk." Marcus ended the call and stood in the fluorescent glare of the terminal, watching planes take off into the storm. Flight 447 would be among them, climbing into the turbulent sky with Captain Charles Anthony Thompson at the controls. A man who carried his mother's picture. A man whose last name he shared. A man who might be. No, Marcus pushed the thought away. He'd grown up without a father, had made peace with that absence years ago. His mother had been enough, had always been enough, even when there wasn't enough of anything else. Food, money, time, all of it in short supply except for love. She'd given him that in abundance, enough to fill the space where a father should have been. But now that space felt different, like a room he'd always known was there but had never entered. And he had the key in his pocket. The rain had lessened to a drizzle by the time Marcus clocked out. His supervisor had grumbled about him being distracted. had threatened to write him up if it happened again. Marcus had nodded, apologized, gone through the motions of caring about a job that suddenly seemed to belong to a different version of himself. The boy who'd started his shift 3 hours ago wouldn't recognize the one walking to his beat-up Honda Civic now, carrying questions that weighed more than any cargo he'd ever loaded. The drive home took him through neighborhoods that told the story of Chicago's divided soul. From the gleaming terminals of O'Hare through suburbs where houses sat like perfect teeth in manicured smiles, then gradually into areas where hope had been foreclosed on long ago. His apartment building squatted on a corner like a tired boxer who'd taken too many hits, all broken bricks and barred windows. But it was home, the latest in a series of places he and his mother had made into something more than their circumstances suggested. She had a gift for that, for finding beauty in broken things. Their apartment might be small, might have walls thin enough to hear every argument and celebration in the building, but she'd made it warm. Pictures covered every surface, photos of the two of them through the years, his school achievements, certificates from her job at the hospital before she'd gotten too sick to work. Notably absent were any pictures of his father. That absence had been like a missing tooth in his childhood, something his tongue kept finding even when he tried to ignore it. Other kids had dads who taught them to throw footballs or fix cars. Marcus had questions that his mother deflected with the skill of a fighter pilot avoiding enemy fire. "He's not part of our lives," she'd say. "We have each other, and that's enough." And it had been enough, until now. Marcus climbed the 3 flights of stairs, each step feeling like a journey toward something irreversible. The hallway smelled of old cooking and older dreams, the fluorescent lights flickering like they were sending Morse code messages about giving up. At apartment 3B, he paused, key in hand. Once he walked through this door, things would change. The comfortable fiction of his fatherless life would end, replaced by what? He found his mother in her usual spot, curled in the recliner they'd bought at a thrift store, a blanket pulled up despite the apartment's warmth. The dialysis left her cold all the time now, her body struggling to regulate what healthy kidneys did without thought. She looked up as he entered, and he saw she'd been crying. "You found something, didn't you?" It wasn't really a question. Marcus pulled out the wallet, handed it to her without a word. She took it with hands that shook slightly, from the illness or emotion he couldn't tell. When she opened it and saw the pilot's license, her breath caught. When she found her own photo, the tears came fresh. "Oh, Charles," she whispered, touching the photo gently. "You kept it." "Mom," Marcus sat on the arm of her chair, something he'd done since he was small enough for her to pull him into her lap. Is Charles Thompson my father?" She looked up at him, this son she'd raised alone, who'd grown tall and strong despite every disadvantage life had thrown at them. In his face, she could see echoes of the man in the photograph, the same strong jaw, the same eyes that seemed to see through to the heart of things. She'd hoped this day would never come, had built walls of silence around the truth. But walls, no matter how carefully constructed, always fall eventually. "Yes," she said simply, "he's your father." The word hung in the air between them like a plane in a holding pattern, circling but not quite ready to land. Marcus felt the floor shift beneath him, as if the building's foundation had suddenly been revealed as nothing more than hope and habit. His father. Not dead, not unknown, not any of the stories he'd told himself. His father was a pilot, was flying planes while Marcus loaded them, was carrying his mother's picture while she struggled to afford medicine. "Tell me," he said, "tell me everything." And so, as thunder rolled across Chicago like heaven clearing its throat, Denise Thompson began to unravel 18 years of careful silence. "I was 19 when I met him," she began, her voice taking on a distant quality as if she was watching the past play out on a screen only she could see. "Working at a coffee shop in the airport. Back then, O'Hare was different, smaller somehow even though it was still huge. More personal, you got to know the regulars, and Charles was one of them. He'd come in before his flights, always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin." She smiled at the memory, and for a moment Marcus could see the young woman from the photograph shining through. He was different from the other pilots. They were all confidence and cologne, walking through like they owned the air itself. But Charles, he was quiet, thoughtful. He'd sit in the corner booth and read these philosophy books. Can you imagine, a pilot reading Kant and Sartre between flights? "What happened?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew. It was an old story played out in a million different ways. Boy meets girl, boy leaves girl, girl raises child alone. We fell in love, she said simply. Or at least I did. I thought he did too. For 6 months it was everything. He'd bring me little gifts from the places he flew. A snow globe from Denver, pressed flowers from San Diego, stupid little things that felt like treasures. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. He was going to leave his wife. The last words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He was married. His mother nodded, not meeting his eyes. I didn't know at first. By the time he told me, I was already in too deep. He said it was complicated, that they'd grown apart, that he was going to ask for a divorce. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because when you're 19 and in love, you believe impossible things. And then I got pregnant. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Everything changed after that. He got scared, I think, the reality of it all, his wife, his career, what people would say. He offered to pay for me to take care of it. An abortion. Yes, but I couldn't. I already loved you, you see. From the moment I knew you existed, I loved you. And when I told Charles that, when I said I was keeping you. She trailed off, lost in memory. He left, Marcus finished. He asked for a transfer to another hub. Sent money for a while, not much, but something. Then even that stopped. I heard he'd reconciled with his wife, that they'd moved to Atlanta. And that was that. 18 years of silence. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights blurred by rain. Somewhere out there, a plane was carrying his father away from him. Again. Why didn't you ever tell me? What would I have said? That your father chose his comfortable life over us? That he was too afraid to be the man you needed him to be? You didn't need that burden, baby. You needed to know you were loved, were wanted. And you were. By me, always by me. He turned back to her, this woman who'd been both mother and father, who'd sacrificed everything to give him a chance at something better. It wasn't your secret to keep Mom. I know, the words came out barely above a whisper. I know that now, but I did what I thought was best. Right or wrong, I did what I thought would protect you. The wallet lay on the coffee table between them like an unexploded bomb. Marcus picked it up again, studied the pilot's license. Captain Charles Anthony Thompson. Based in Chicago again, apparently. Had he transferred back? Did he know Denise still lived here? Did he ever think about the son he'd walked away from? What are you going to do? His mother asked. It was a good question. What did you do when you discovered your father had been flying over your head your whole life? When the absence that had shaped you turned out to be a presence, just one that had chosen to remain at 30,000 feet? I don't know, Marcus admitted. Then looking at the wallet again, but I have to return this. It's the right thing to do. His mother made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You always did have a good heart. Despite everything, despite how hard it's been, you've always tried to do the right thing. You get that from? She stopped herself. From you, Marcus finished firmly. I get that from you. But even as he said it, he wondered. What else had he inherited from the man in the photograph? The long fingers that could grip cargo but might have been meant for cockpit controls. The way he sometimes caught himself staring at planes taking off, imagining what it would be like to be behind the stick. The dreams that felt too big for the life he'd been born into. That night Marcus barely slept. He lay in his narrow bed, listening to the sounds of the city, sirens, car horns, the occasional shouting match from the street below. But underneath it all, he heard something else. The drone of aircraft engines, constant as a heartbeat. He'd lived near the airport his whole life, had long ago learned to tune out the sound. But now each plane that passed overhead carried new meaning. Was his father up there? Was he flying through the darkness, unaware that his son was looking up at navigation lights that blinked like Morse code spelling out questions? Did he ever think about the family he'd left behind? Did he regret it? Or had Marcus and his mother been just turbulence to fly around, rough air to be avoided on the way to smoother skies? By morning, Marcus had made his decision. He called in sick to work, the first time in 2 years, ignoring Ray's threats about reliability and responsibility. He had bigger things to worry about than loading cargo. He had a wallet to return and questions that demanded answers. We're about 25 minutes into this journey now, and if you're still with us, perhaps you're feeling some of what Marcus is feeling, that mixture of anger, curiosity, and hope that comes when our world suddenly reveals hidden depths. If this story is resonating with you, consider subscribing and leaving a comment about where you're watching from. Sometimes the most powerful connections we make are with strangers who understand our struggles, who have faced their own moments of revelation. So share your location, and let's build a community of people who believe in the power of truth, even when it's complicated. The administrative offices of American Airlines at O'Hare were a different world from the cargo ramps. Here, everything was clean lines and filtered air, carpeted hallways that absorbed sound and glass walls that suggested transparency while revealing nothing. Marcus had put on his best clothes, khakis, and a button-down shirt that made him look like the college student he might have been in a different life. "I need to return something to Captain Thompson," he told the receptionist, holding up the wallet. "He dropped it on the tarmac last night." She looked at him with the polite disinterest of someone who dealt with 100 small problems a day. "You can leave it here. I'll make sure he gets it." "Actually, I'd prefer to return it personally. There's cash in it, and I want to make sure he knows it's all there." The receptionist's expression softened slightly. Honesty in returning money was rare enough to warrant special consideration. "Let me check his schedule." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Captain Thompson is scheduled for a flight this afternoon. He usually arrives about 2 hours early for prep, if you want to wait." "I'll wait," Marcus said quickly. She directed him to a small waiting area with a view of the terminal. Marcus sat in a chair that probably cost more than a month of his salary, watching the organized chaos of air travel. Families rushed past pulling luggage, business travelers walked with purpose while talking on phones, flight crews moved in small groups, their uniforms marking them as members of an exclusive club. He'd been waiting an hour when he saw him. Captain Charles Anthony Thompson walked past the waiting area without a glance, pulling a small flight bag, his uniform crisp and perfect. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs as he stood, legs suddenly unsteady. "Captain Thompson." The man turned, and Marcus found himself looking into eyes that were disturbingly familiar. They were his own eyes, set in a face that showed what his might look like in 37 years. The recognition hit them both like clear air turbulence, sudden, shocking, leaving them both grasping for balance. Charles's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally resignation. "My God," he breathed. "Marcus." The sound of his name in his father's voice, because he couldn't pretend this wasn't his father, not when the evidence was written in their shared features, made something crack inside Marcus's chest. "You know who I am." Charles looked around, seeming to realize they were drawing attention. "Come with me, please. We can't do this here." He led Marcus to a small conference room, closing the door behind them. For a moment, they just looked at each other, 18 years of absence compressed into the space between them. Finally, Marcus held out the wallet. "You dropped this." Charles took it with hands that weren't quite steady, checking the contents automatically. When he saw the photo of Denise was still there, his shoulders sagged. "You saw it." "Why?" The word came out harsher than Marcus intended. "Why keep her picture if you were just going to abandon us?" Charles sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 55 years. "Because I'm a coward," he said simply. "Because I loved her and I left anyway. Because I've regretted it every day since, and the photo is my penance. My reminder of the life I was too afraid to choose." "That's supposed to make it better. You think carrying a photo makes up for 18 years. "No," Charles met his eyes. "Nothing makes up for that, nothing ever could." Marcus remained standing, arms crossed, trying to armor himself against whatever was coming. "She needed you. We needed you. Do you have any idea what it was like? Watching her work herself sick trying to keep us afloat, moving every time the rent went up, me working since I was 14 just to help with groceries." Each word hit Charles like a physical blow. "I sent money." "For 6 months," Marcus's control cracked. 6 months and then nothing, like we stopped existing, like we were just some mistake you could pay off and forget." "I never forgot." Charles's voice was quiet. "Not for a single day." "But you never came back either." "No, I didn't." Charles rubbed his face, looking older than his years. "My wife, she found out about the affair, threatened divorce, custody of our daughters, everything. I was young and scared and selfish. I chose the easy path, chose to keep the life I had rather than fight for the life I should have wanted." "Daughters," the word tasted bitter in Marcus's mouth. "I have sisters. 2, Sarah's 25, Rebecca's 22. Charles pulled out his phone, then seemed to think better of it. "They don't know about you." Of course they don't, Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. The dirty secret, the mistake, the kid from the wrong side of the terminal. You were never a mistake, Charles said fiercely. What I did was the mistake. Who I was back then, the choices I made, those were the mistakes. But you were the best thing that could have come from that time, and I was too much of a fool to see it. Mom's sick, Marcus said abruptly. Kidney failure, needs dialysis 3 times a week, can barely afford the medicine even with insurance. That photo you carry? The woman in it is dying slowly, and she's doing it in poverty because you couldn't face your responsibilities. Charles's face crumpled. He looked like a man watching his carefully constructed life reveal itself as a house of cards. I didn't know. How bad is it? She needs a transplant. Been on the list for 2 years. Meanwhile, she gets a little weaker every day, and I work double shifts loading bags for pilots like you, trying to scrape together enough to keep her alive. Marcus uncrossed his arms, suddenly exhausted. I didn't come here for money. I came to return your wallet and maybe understand why you could just walk away like we meant nothing. You meant everything, Charles said quietly. That was the problem. You meant so much it terrified me. I'd built this life, this identity, Captain Thompson, respectable pilot, family man. And then there was your mother, and she made me want to throw it all away. When you came along, when she told me she was pregnant, I saw my whole life splitting in two, the life I had and the life I wanted, and I was too weak to choose the harder path. So you chose nothing instead, left us both. Yes, the admission seemed to physically pain him, and I've been half a man ever since, going through the motions, flying on autopilot in every sense. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of lost years pressing down on them. Outside the conference room, life went on, flights were called, passengers hurried to gates, the great machine of air travel continued its endless operation. But inside this small room, time had stopped, caught between past and present, between what was and what might have been. What happened to your marriage? Marcus asked eventually. Charles gave a bitter smile. Survived on paper. We stayed together for the girls, for appearances, for all the wrong reasons. Divorced 5 years ago when Rebecca graduated high school. Ironic, isn't it? I gave up you and your mother to save a marriage that died anyway. And now I fly. It's all I have, really, all I'm good at. I requested a transfer back to Chicago last year. Don't know why, maybe hoping. But that's foolish. Your mother probably remarried, moved on. God knows she deserved better than what I gave her. She never remarried. Marcus watched his father's face carefully. Never even dated, said she'd had her great love and once was enough. Charles closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were wet. I need to see her. No, the refusal came instantly. You don't get to waltz back in now, not when she's sick, not when she's vulnerable. You lost that right 18 years ago. You're right, Charles didn't argue, didn't try to justify. But could you? Would you tell her I asked? Tell her I'm sorry, I know it's not enough, could never be enough, but... I'll think about it. Marcus stood to leave, then paused. The money, you stopped sending money after 6 months. Why? Charles looked ashamed. Denise sent it back. Every check after the first few. Sent them back with a note that said she didn't want my guilt money. Said if I couldn't give you my name and my time, she didn't want my cash. That sounded like his mother. Proud, stubborn, unwilling to be anyone's charity case, even when charity might have made their lives easier. Marcus headed for the door, needing to get out, to breathe air that didn't carry the weight of recognition and regret. Marcus, his father's voice stopped him. I know I have no right to ask, but could I know about you, just what kind of man you've become? Marcus turned back, seeing not Captain Thompson, but a broken man carrying 18 years of regret. I work baggage at American. Graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA, but couldn't afford college. I read philosophy books on my breaks, can't, Sartre, the same ones you used to read. I take care of my mother, I pay my bills, I don't walk away from my responsibilities. The last words came out harder than intended. I'm the man you should have been. He left then, not waiting for a response, walking quickly through the terminal as if he could outpace the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. His father was real. Had a name, a face, a voice that carried traces of his own. Had explanations that explained nothing and apologies that fixed nothing. Had daughters who were his sisters who'd grown up with the father he'd never known. Outside, planes continued their endless dance of arrival and departure. Marcus stood watching them, thinking about paths taken and not taken, about choices that ripple through generations like wake turbulence. Somewhere in the city, his mother was waiting to hear about this encounter. Somewhere in the terminal, his father was probably sitting in that conference room, holding a wallet with a faded photo, contemplating the wreckage of choices made in youth and fear. And Marcus was caught between them, between past and present, between the life he'd lived and the life he might have had. He was 18 years old, loading cargo for minimum wage, watching planes he'd never fly carry people to places he'd never see. But he was also something else now, a man who'd faced his ghosts, who'd asked his questions, who'd looked his absent father in the eye and refused to grant easy absolution. The rain had stopped, but clouds still hung low over Chicago, gray and heavy with unspilled grief. Marcus walked to his car, each step taking him away from his father and back toward his mother, toward the life they'd built without Captain Charles Anthony Thompson. It wasn't much of a life by some standards, small apartment, old car, constant financial strain. But it was honest. It was theirs. And it was built on love rather than fear, on staying rather than leaving, on facing hard truths rather than flying away from them. As he drove home, Marcus thought about forgiveness. His mother had never spoken badly of his father, had never poisoned him against the man who'd left them. She'd carried her hurt quietly, with dignity, protecting Marcus from the full weight of abandonment. But had she forgiven? Could you forgive someone who'd never asked for it, who disappeared so completely that forgiveness had nowhere to land? And could Marcus forgive? Not for his father's sake, but for his own. The anger he'd carried unknowingly all these years had a target now, a face and a name and a conference room confession. But what did you do with 18 years of accumulated hurt? Where did you put it down? How did you keep it from poisoning your own chances at love, at trust, at believing people would stay? The apartment was quiet when he got home. His mother had fallen asleep in her chair, the blanket pulled up to her chin. She looked so small, so fragile. The dialysis was taking its toll, each treatment leaving her a little more drained, a little less herself. How many years did she have left? How many chances for reconciliation, for closure, for healing old wounds? Marcus sat on the couch, watching her sleep, wrestling with the weight of what he knew. His father wanted to see her. The man who'd broken her heart, who'd left her to raise a child alone, who'd chosen his comfortable life over their difficult love. But he was also the man whose picture she still cried over, whose memory still had the power to shake her voice. The man she'd loved enough to protect even in his absence, never turning Marcus against him, never using her son as a weapon in a war of hurt. She stirred, eyes opening slowly. "You saw him?" Again, not a question. "Yeah. How was it?" Marcus considered the question. How was it to meet the ghost that had haunted your whole life? To discover your father was neither monster nor hero, but simply a man who'd made terrible choices. To see your own face reflected in someone who'd run from you before you were even born. "Complicated," he said finally. His mother smiled sadly. It always was with Charles. Nothing was ever simple. He thought too much, felt too much, wanted too much. He could never just be, always looking for meaning, for purpose, for some perfect life that existed just out of reach. She shifted in her chair, wincing slightly. "Did he ask about me?" "He wants to see you." The words hung in the air like a held breath. His mother's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, pain, something that might have been hope quickly suppressed. After all this time. "I told him no, told him he didn't have the right." "Oh, Marcus." She reached out and he took her hand, feeling how thin it had become, how fragile. "That wasn't your decision to make." "He hurt you." "Yes, he did, but that's between him and me. You can be angry for yourself, baby, but you can't be angry for me. I chose my path a long time ago. Chose to love him, chose to keep you, chose to let him go. Those were my choices." "Do you want to see him?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me has imagined it 1,000 times. What I'd say, how I'd act, whether I'd be angry or indifferent or—" She trailed off. "Or what?" "Or whether I'd still love him." The admission came out barely above a whisper. "It's foolish, I know. 18 years, Marcus. You don't love someone who's been gone for 18 years. You love the memory, the might have been. You love a ghost." "He kept your picture." Her hand tightened on his. "Did he?" "In his wallet. Said he looked at it every day. Said it was his penance." Charles and his penance. He always did like to suffer beautifully. Made him feel noble, I think, like his pain meant something. But there was fondness in her voice despite the words. "What did you think of him?" I think, Marcus struggled to put it into words, I think he's exactly what you'd said, complicated, thoughtful, weak. He made choices based on fear and he knows it. He's been half alive ever since. While we've been fully alive, his mother said firmly. Whatever else, we've been that. We've struggled and scraped and worried, but we've been real. We've been present. We've been here for each other. He has other kids, 2 daughters. Ah, the single syllable carried volumes. And they don't know about you. No. That must have hurt. It had more than Marcus wanted to admit. Sisters he'd never known, who'd grown up with the father he'd never had. Who'd had bedtime stories and driving lessons and someone to walk them down the aisle someday. Who'd had what he deserved but never received. I have you, he said. That's enough. Is it? His mother studied his face. Is it really enough, or is that just what we tell ourselves because it has to be? Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe accept. Marcus, this is Captain Thompson. Charles, you're... A pause. I'm sorry to call. I got your number from employee records. I hope that's okay. Marcus looked at his mother, who was watching him intently. What do you want? I've been thinking since you left, about chances, about time, about your mother being sick. Another pause. I'm type O negative, universal donor. If she needs a kidney, I want to be tested, to see if I'm a match. The world seemed to stop. Marcus felt his mother's hand in his, felt the weight of possibility shift the air in the room. A kidney. A chance at real life again, not just survival. From the man who'd given Marcus life but nothing else, now offering to give life again. I'll have to ask her, Marcus managed. Of course, I'm not trying to buy forgiveness. I know there's not enough currency in the world for that, but if I can help her, if I can do this one thing. His voice broke slightly. Please, let me do this one thing right. Marcus ended the call and looked at his mother. Her eyes were wide, tears starting to fall. He wants to be tested, he said unnecessarily, to see if he can donate. Oh, Charles, she whispered, still trying to be noble. It could save your life. It could complicate everything. Mom, Marcus squeezed her hand. It could save your life. She closed her eyes and Marcus could see her wrestling with it. Pride versus need. Past versus future. The simple clarity of their life together versus the messy possibility of letting Charles back in, even just for this. All right, she said finally. He can be tested, but Marcus, you need to understand something. This doesn't fix anything. This doesn't make him your father in any way that matters. He's a donor, nothing more. But Marcus could see the hope in her eyes, the first real hope he'd seen in months. Not just for a kidney, but for something else. Resolution, maybe. Or just the chance to look the love of her life in the eye one more time and find out if ghosts could be laid to rest. The next few days passed in a blur of arrangements. Charles was tested. He was a match, of course he was. Life didn't deal in simple ironies. The hospital scheduled consultations, evaluations, preparations for surgery. And through it all, Marcus watched his parents dance around each other like binary stars, held apart by the gravity of their history. The first meeting was at the hospital. Neutral ground. Charles arrived in civilian clothes, looking smaller somehow without his uniform. Denise was in her wheelchair, bad day, weak from dialysis. They looked at each other across 18 years of silence, and Marcus saw something pass between them that made him feel like an intruder. Denise, just her name, but Charles loaded it with enough regret to fill a cargo hold. Charles, she kept her voice level, controlled. You look well. You look beautiful. Don't, the word came out sharp. Don't do that. Don't come here with your compliments and your noble gestures. I'm not 19 anymore. I'm not that girl who believed impossible things. I know, Charles sat down, bringing himself to her eye level. But I'm not that man anymore either. The one who ran. I'm just someone trying to do one right thing. Maybe the only right thing I'll ever do. Our son is the right thing you did, Denise said firmly. The only good thing that came from us. Look at him, Charles, really look at him. He's everything you could have been if you'd been brave enough to stay. Charles did look, and Marcus saw fresh pain bloom in his father's eyes. I know, God help me, I know. The meeting was short, just long enough to discuss logistics, sign papers, make arrangements. But Marcus saw the way his parents' eyes kept finding each other, the way their careful distance spoke of dangerous proximity. 18 years was a long time, but some connections don't care about time. Some loves leave marks that decades can't erase. As they prepared to leave, Charles stopped Marcus. Could I ask you something? Marcus nodded warily. The philosophy books, you really read them? Yeah, started in high school, found a bunch at a used bookstore. Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, Sartre's Being and Nothingness. Camus too, The Stranger, The Myth of Sisyphus. Charles smiled, and it was the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him. Camus was my favorite. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, Marcus completed the quote. Yes, Charles looked at him with something like wonder. Maybe we push different rocks up different hills, but we're both still pushing. The difference is, Marcus said, I don't let my rock roll back down. The smile faded, but Charles nodded. No, you don't. That's what makes you better than me. It would have been easy to agree to take the moral high ground and stand on it. But Marcus was tired of easy, tired of the simple story of abandonment and resentment. Real life was messier than that. We all let rocks roll sometimes, he said. The question is whether we go back and start pushing again. Charles studied him. Your mother raised a philosopher. My mother raised a realist. Philosophy's just what I do on breaks. Over the next week, as they prepared for the transplant, Marcus watched his parents slowly circle toward each other. Charles came to the apartment once, bringing Chinese food, apparently Denise's favorite from the old days. They ate quietly, carefully, talking about safe things. The weather, changes at the airport, Marcus's work. But underneath the careful conversation, Marcus could feel the pull between them. 18 years of separation hadn't killed whatever had drawn them together in that airport coffee shop. If anything, time had distilled it, made it more potent for being forbidden. Do you still read philosophy? Denise asked at one point. Some, Charles admitted. Though these days I lean more toward the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, learning to accept what can't be changed. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength, Denise quoted. Charles stared at her. You remember. I remember everything. The words carried weight. That's my curse, perfect recall of imperfect times. After Charles left, Marcus found his mother crying quietly. I'm still angry, she said. I need you to know that. I'm still so angry at him for leaving, for choosing fear over love, for making me do it all alone. But God help me, I still. You still love him. I still remember loving him. I don't know if that's the same thing. As the surgery date approached, the story began to ripple outward. Charles had to tell his daughters, a conversation that by his account went about as well as could be expected. They were shocked, hurt, angry, but also curious about this brother they'd never known, this parallel life their father had hidden. At work, Marcus became something of a celebrity, the baggage handler whose pilot father was donating a kidney. Ray, his supervisor, actually showed something approaching human emotion. Why didn't you say your old man was a pilot? Could have gotten you better shifts. He wasn't around to be my old man, Marcus said simply. Still, blood's blood. But blood wasn't blood, Marcus thought. Blood was just biology. Family was choice, was staying, was loading 1,000 bags in the rain to keep the lights on. Family was his mother reading to him even when she was exhausted from double shifts. Family was thrift store Christmases and birthday cakes from discount bakeries and love that didn't depend on DNA. Still, as the surgery date arrived, Marcus found himself in the waiting room with two young women who shared his eyes. Sarah and Rebecca Thompson, his sisters. They'd asked to meet him, and he'd agreed, though he wasn't sure why. This is weird, Rebecca said. She was the younger one, just out of college, with a directness that reminded him of himself. Like, seriously weird, we have a brother. Half-brother, Sarah corrected. She was more reserved, studying Marcus like he was a problem to solve. Though I guess that's just semantics. Our father is giving his kidney to a woman he had an affair with, Rebecca continued. I don't think semantics are our biggest issue. Despite himself, Marcus almost smiled. It's weird for me too. I grew up an only child. Was it hard, Sarah asked, growing up without him? Marcus considered how to answer. These women had had the father he'd deserved. It would be easy to make them feel guilty for that, but what would be the point? They hadn't chosen any more than he had. It was what it was, he said finally. My mom was enough, we made it work. She must be pretty amazing, Rebecca said, to raise you alone and for you to turn out. She gestured vaguely at him. To turn out what? Normal, she laughed. Employed, not a serial killer. I mean, the bar's pretty low, but still. This time Marcus did smile. She is amazing, though the jury's still out on the serial killer thing. Sarah rolled her eyes. Great, a brother with Dad's sense of humor. They talked for a while, feeling each other out, finding unexpected common ground. They were all readers. They all had complicated feelings about their father. They all knew what it was like to want his approval and hate themselves for wanting it. He was never really present, Sarah said at one point. Even when he was home, always distracted, always looking past us at something we couldn't see. Now we know what he was looking at, Rebecca added. He was looking at the life he left behind. When they called Charles back for final prep, the three of them stood together. Whatever happened next, they were connected now. Not a family exactly, but something. People joined by circumstance and genetics and a father who'd failed them all in different ways. The surgery itself took 4 hours. Marcus sat with his mother beforehand, holding her hand as they wheeled Charles past on his way to the OR. Their eyes met, all three of them, and for a moment they were back in that coffee shop, young and in love and unaware of how badly they could hurt each other. Thank you, Denise whispered. Charles just nodded, but his eyes said everything. Then he was gone, and it was just Marcus and his mother again, the way it had always been. Whatever happens, she said, I need you to know something. You were never a mistake, never a burden. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave my life meaning when I thought I'd lost everything. You saved me, baby. Long before Charles offered his kidney, you saved me. Mom. No, let me say this, because I don't know what's going to happen in there, and I need you to hear it. Every sacrifice, every hard day, every move to a smaller apartment, I'd do it all again. 1,000 times over, because I got to be your mother. I got to watch you become the man you are. And that man is worth everything. Marcus felt tears on his face. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby, always and forever. They wheeled her away, and Marcus was alone with his thoughts and the antiseptic smell of the hospital. His parents were in surgery, one giving part of himself to save the other. It was poetic in a way Charles would probably appreciate, the philosophy-reading pilot finally finding a grand gesture worthy of his complicated soul. The waiting was the hardest part. Sarah and Rebecca stayed for a while, but eventually they had to leave, Sarah to her job, Rebecca to classes. They exchanged numbers, made vague promises about keeping in touch. Whether they would or not remain to be seen. Some bridges couldn't be built in a day, no matter how much DNA you shared. Hospital waiting rooms were their own kind of purgatory, Marcus thought. Fluorescent limbo where time moved differently, where every doctor who appeared might be carrying news that would change everything. He'd spent too much time in rooms like this over the past 2 years, waiting while his mother had treatments, procedures, bad news delivered in gentle voices. But this felt different. This felt like possibility. It was evening when the surgeon finally appeared. Dr. Patel, a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands. The surgery went well, she said, and Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. Both patients are stable. The kidney is already producing urine, which is a very good sign. Your mother will need to stay for monitoring, of course, and there's always the possibility of rejection, but I'm optimistic. And Charles. Recovery will take some time, but he should be fine. Living donors typically do very well. He'll be able to fly again in a few months. Marcus thanked her, then sat back down to process it all. His mother had a new kidney. A chance at real life again, not just the slow decline they'd been managing. And it had come from his father, the man who'd given him life and then walked away, now giving life again. They let him see his mother first. She was still groggy from anesthesia, but her eyes found his immediately. Hey, baby, she whispered. Hey, Mom, how do you feel? Like I've been run over by a truck, but a hopeful truck. She managed a small smile. Did it work? Dr. Patel says it's already working. The kidney's good. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Charles always did have good kidneys. Used to brag he could drink anyone under the table and never get hungover. Said his kidneys were industrial strength. Mom, yeah, baby. Are you going to be okay with this, having part of him inside you? She was quiet for a moment. I carried you for 9 months, she said finally. You were part of him inside me, and that turned out pretty well. I think I can handle a kidney. Later, they let him see Charles. His father looked smaller in the hospital bed, more vulnerable. The invincible pilot brought down to earth. He opened his eyes when Marcus entered. How is she? Good, the kidney's working. Charles closed his eyes again, and Marcus saw tears at the corners. Good, that's good. Why did you really do it? Charles was quiet so long Marcus thought he might have fallen back asleep. Then, because love isn't just a feeling, it's a debt. I've owed your mother for 18 years, owed you both. This doesn't pay it off, nothing could, but at least it's a start. She doesn't owe you anything for this. I know, that's what makes it worth doing. Charles opened his eyes. I learned something over the years, reading all that philosophy. Sartre was wrong. Hell isn't other people. Hell is the chances you didn't take, the words you didn't say, the love you didn't choose. I've been in hell for 18 years, Marcus. This is just me trying to find the exit. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. What did you say to a father who was a stranger, who was trying to make amends for wounds that had already scarred over, who was literally giving parts of himself to fix what he'd broken? The books, Marcus said finally. The philosophy books, why those? A small smile crossed Charles's face. When I was your age, I thought if I read enough, thought enough, I could figure out how to live, how to be good, how to make the right choices. Turns out knowing and doing are different things. You can read every philosopher who ever lived and still be a coward when it counts. But you kept reading. Hope, I guess, that someday I'd find the answer, the key to being better than I was. He looked at Marcus. Turns out the answer wasn't in books. It was in a cargo hold at O'Hare loading bags in the rain. I'm not your redemption, Marcus said firmly. I'm not here to make you feel better about your choices. I know, but you're proof that something good came from them. That Denise and I, for all our mistakes, we made something worthwhile. She made something worthwhile. You just donated genetic material. Fair, Charles didn't argue. More than fair, but I'm trying now. Doesn't that count for something? I don't know, Marcus answered honestly. I guess we'll find out. The recovery was slow. Marcus split his time between the hospital and work, catching naps in waiting room chairs and loading cargo with eyes gritty from exhaustion. His mother's body accepted the kidney, Charles's industrial-strength kidney, as she'd taken to calling it. Color returned to her face. Energy returned to her voice. For the first time in 2 years, she looked like she might have a future instead of just a prolonged present. Charles recovered too, though slower. Apparently, giving organs was harder than receiving them. He had complications, nothing life-threatening, but enough to keep him in the hospital for 2 weeks. During that time, a strange routine developed. Marcus would visit his mother, then stop by Charles's room. They'd talk about books, about flying, about nothing important. Slowly, carefully, like architects building a bridge across 18 years of absence. One day, Charles asked, have you ever thought about learning to fly? Can't afford it, Marcus said automatically. That's not what I asked. Marcus was quiet. Had he thought about it? Of course. Every kid who grew up near an airport thought about it. But for him, it had always felt like thinking about walking on the moon, theoretically possible but practically unreachable. Sometimes, he admitted, when I'm loading cargo, I think about what it would be like to be in the cockpit instead of the hold. You have the hands for it, Charles said. Long fingers, good for working the controls, and the mind, pilots need to think ahead, see patterns, make quick decisions based on incomplete information. Like I said, can't afford it. There are ways, scholarships, programs. The airlines are desperate for pilots right now. They're creating pipelines especially for... He paused. For minorities, Marcus finished. For black pilots, that what you were going to say. For underrepresented communities, Charles corrected. And yes, that includes black pilots. Less than 3% of commercial pilots are black. The industry knows that needs to change. So I'd be a diversity hire. You'd be a qualified pilot who also helps the industry better reflect the people it serves. Charles's voice grew firm. Don't do that. Don't diminish opportunities because they're trying to fix historical inequities. You think I didn't benefit from being a white man when I started. You think doors didn't open easier for me. It was the first time they directly addressed race, the thing that had been hovering unspoken between them. Marcus was black, had grown up black in America with all that entailed. Charles was white, had lived in that different country that existed parallel to but separate from Marcus's experience. Did my race make it easier? Marcus asked. To leave, I mean, was it easier to pretend we didn't exist because we didn't look like your real family? Charles flinched as if slapped. Maybe, he admitted after a moment. God, I hope not, but maybe. I told myself it was about the situation, about being married, about careers and complications. But you're right to ask. I've had 18 years to examine my choices, and I still don't know all the reasons I made them. Mom never made it about race, never said you left because she was black. Your mother is a better person than I am, always has been. Charles shifted in his bed, wincing. But you deserve to know where you came from, all of where you came from, my family there. They're not bad people, but they're limited, small-town Minnesota, not a lot of diversity. My marriage to Patricia, it was partly about staying in that safe, known world. And Mom was the unknown. Your mother was revolution, Charles said simply. She was everything I'd been taught not to want and everything I actually did want. She challenged every assumption I had about myself, about what my life should look like. I should have been brave enough to rise to that challenge. Instead, I retreated to safety. And now I'm a divorced man with a missing kidney and 2 daughters who are barely speaking to me, trying to build some kind of relationship with the son I abandoned. He smiled ruefully. Still think I should have been braver 18 years ago. They were discharged on the same day, which felt like another one of life's small ironies. Marcus helped his mother to the car while Charles's daughter Sarah helped him. The 4 of them stood in the hospital entrance for a moment, 2 families that were and weren't, connected by blood and separation, and the kidney now filtering toxins in Denise's body. Thank you, Denise said to Charles, simple words carrying complicated weight. Don't, Charles replied. Please just get better live, that's all the thanks I need. They went their separate ways, but Marcus could see his mother watching Charles in the side mirror as they drove away. You okay? He asked. I don't know, she admitted. For 18 years he was frozen in my memory, young, beautiful, conflicted, now he's real again, older, grayer, damaged, it's unsettling. Do you still love him? She considered the question as they navigated the familiar streets toward home. I love who he was, who we were together, but that was a different life. We're different people now. Are you? You think people don't change in 18 years? I think some things don't change, no matter how many years pass. His mother looked at him sharply. When did you become so wise? Probably when I was loading my 100th bag in the rain, wondering why life had to be so hard. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry for all of it. For the struggles, the limitations, everything you missed out on because I couldn't give you more. You gave me enough, Marcus said firmly. You gave me everything that mattered. But even as he said it, he thought about Charles's question, about flying, about the possibility of rising above the life he'd known, of seeing the world from 30,000 feet instead of from the cargo hold. Was it possible? Could the son of a pilot who'd never claimed him claim the sky for himself? That night, as his mother slept peacefully for the first time in months without the shadow of dialysis looming, Marcus looked up flight schools. The costs were staggering, 50,000, 70,000, some even more. But there were programs, like Charles had said, scholarships. Airlines so desperate for pilots they were willing to pay for training in exchange for commitment. United had a program. So did American, the airline where he already worked. They called it the Cadet Academy. They'd pay for training in exchange for a commitment to fly for them. The requirements were steep, a 4-year degree or equivalent experience, passing scores on a battery of tests, a first-class medical certificate. But it was possible, difficult but possible. Marcus stayed up late filling out applications, writing essays about why he wanted to fly. He wrote about loading cargo and wondering about the destinations, about growing up near O'Hare and feeling the pull of departure, about wanting to rise above circumstances and see what the world looked like from above the clouds. He didn't write about his father. That felt too complicated, too much like using a connection he'd never had. This had to be his own journey, earned on his own merits. But as he wrote, he thought about Charles reading philosophy between flights, searching for meaning at altitude. Maybe the tendency to look up to seek elevation was something that could be inherited after all. A week later, his mother was back for a checkup. The kidney was functioning perfectly. Dr. Patel was thrilled with the progress. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," she said. "This is the best recovery I've seen in years." "I have reasons to get better," Denise replied, looking at Marcus. After the appointment, they stopped for coffee, a small celebration of functioning kidneys and possible futures. That's when Charles walked in. Not entirely surprising, since the coffee shop was near the hospital, but the way Denise's breath caught suggested she'd been hoping and dreading this moment in equal measure. "I can go," Charles said quickly, seeing them. "Sit," Denise commanded, and Charles sat. Old patterns apparently died hard. They drank coffee in careful silence for a moment. Then Denise said, "You look terrible." "Thanks, you look beautiful." "I told you not to do that." "Sorry, habit." Charles wrapped his hands around his cup like he was cold. "How's the kidney?" "Industrial strength, like you always claimed, filtering like a champion." "Good, that's good." Marcus watched them dance around each other, these two people who'd created him in love and separated in fear. He thought about leaving them alone, but his mother's hand on his arm kept him in place. "I'm applying to flight school," he announced, partly to break the tension. Both parents turned to him in surprise. "Really?" Charles's face lit up with something that looked dangerously like pride. "American's cadet program. If I get in, they'll pay for training." "That's wonderful," Denise said, though Marcus could see the worry in her eyes. Her baby, her reason for everything, talking about leaving the ground. "I could help," Charles offered quickly. "With the application, interview prep, I know people." "No," Marcus's response was firm. "I need to do this myself, earn it myself." Charles nodded, understanding. "Of course, but if you have questions about the industry, the lifestyle, the challenges." "Maybe," Marcus conceded. "We'll see." They finished their coffee, conversation staying on safe ground, the weather, Marcus's work, Denise's recovery. But underneath, Marcus could feel the pull between his parents, the gravity of unfinished business. When they left, Charles walked them to the car. "Denise," he said as she got in, "I know I have no right to ask, but would you consider having dinner with me, just to talk, about Marcus, about everything?" She looked at him for a long moment. "I'll think about it." It wasn't yes, but it wasn't no. Charles seemed to understand that was more than he had any right to expect. He stepped back, letting them leave, but Marcus saw him in the rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot like a man who'd forgotten how to move forward. "You should go," Marcus said as they drove home. "To dinner with your father? Are you insane?" "Maybe, but you should still go." "Why?" "Because you have 18 years of things to say to each other. Because he gave you a kidney, and you gave him a son, and neither of you knows what to do with those debts. Because you're both still in love, and pretending you're not is exhausting to watch." His mother nearly ran a red light. "We are not still in love." "Mom." "We're not. Love requires presence, consistency, trust. You can't love someone who hasn't been there." "Maybe not, but you can love who they're trying to become." She pulled into their apartment complex, parking in their usual spot. "When did you become such a romantic?" "Probably when I realized I was the product of one. You don't keep someone's picture for 18 years unless the love was real. Complicated and painful and ultimately broken, but real." "Real doesn't mean recoverable." "No," Marcus agreed, "but doesn't it at least mean worth examining?" His mother sighed. "You want me to have dinner with him?" "I want you to do whatever will make you happy. But I think you need to talk to him, not for his sake. For yours. You've been carrying this for 18 years, Mom. Maybe it's time to put it down." "And pick up what instead?" "I don't know, maybe nothing, maybe something new. But you won't know until you try." That night his mother called Charles. Marcus gave her privacy, heading to his room, but the walls were thin. He heard her voice, careful and controlled, agreeing to dinner, setting boundaries, making it clear this was about closure, not reconciliation. But Marcus had seen them together, had watched 18 years try to reassert themselves every time they were in the same room. Closure was a nice word, a safe word. But sometimes closing one door meant opening another. The dinner was set for Friday. Marcus worked a double shift to keep his mind off it, loading cargo with extra vigor. Ray commented on his energy. "You bucking for a promotion or something?" "Or something," Marcus agreed. He'd submitted his application to the cadet program. Now it was just waiting, hoping his essays and experience would be enough to overcome his lack of a degree. He'd written about responsibility, about understanding the weight of carrying people safely from one place to another, about how loading cargo had taught him that every bag belonged to someone who trusted the airline with their possessions, and how flying would mean they trusted him with their lives. It was a good essay. Whether it was good enough remained to be seen. Friday came like any other day, except his mother spent 3 hours getting ready. She changed outfits 4 times, did and redid her makeup, fussed with her hair until Marcus gently took the brush away. "You look beautiful," he said. "You always look beautiful." "I look old." "You look like someone who's lived, who's survived, who's raised a son and battled illness and came out the other side. You look like a warrior." She smiled, touching his face. "My sweet boy, always knowing just what to say." "I learned from the best." Charles picked her up at 7. He dressed carefully too, Marcus could tell, not formal but thoughtful. They looked at each other like teenagers on a first date, all nerves and possibility. "I'll have her home by 10, Charles told Marcus, then caught himself. "I mean unless, we'll see." "Take your time," Marcus said. "I'll be here." After they left, the apartment felt empty. Marcus tried to read, tried to watch TV, but couldn't focus. His parents were out there somewhere, navigating 18 years of hurt and silence over appetizers. He wondered what they were saying, whether old wounds were being opened or finally cleaned. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "Is it weird that our dad is on a date with your mom?" Marcus smiled, typing back. "Everything about this is weird." "Fair, Sarah's freaking out, thinks Dad's lost his mind." "Maybe he has, maybe that's what it takes sometimes. Losing your mind to find your heart." "Okay, now you sound like Dad with his philosophy stuff." "Occupational hazard of sharing DNA, I guess." There was a pause then. "It's kind of cool having a brother, even a half one, even like this." "Yeah," Marcus typed, "it kind of is." They texted for a while, getting to know each other in the way of their generation, through screens and abbreviated thoughts. Rebecca was funny, sharp, irreverent in a way that reminded Marcus of himself. Sarah was harder to read, more guarded but warming slowly. They were forming something, the three of them. Not quite siblings, but not strangers either. Another bridge being built one message at a time. It was nearly midnight when his mother came home. Marcus was on the couch, pretending to read but really waiting. She came in quietly, face unreadable. "How was it?" She sat beside him, still in her good dress, smelling of perfume and possibility. "It was illuminating." "Good illuminating or bad illuminating?" "Both, neither, I don't know." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "We talked, really talked. About you, about us, about all the things we should have said 18 years ago. He told me about his marriage, how it died slowly over years. I told him about our struggles, about raising you alone. We were honest in a way we never were back then." And nothing and everything." She sat up, looking at him. "He asked me to forgive him." "Did you?" "I told him forgiveness wasn't mine to give. It's yours. He left you, not just me. I chose to love him knowing he was married. You didn't choose anything. You just paid the price for our choices." "What did he say to that?" "He said he knew, said he didn't expect your forgiveness, just hoped to earn the chance to know you." She paused. "He wants to teach you to fly." I told him no help. "Not help, just sharing knowledge, father to son." She studied his face. "Would that be so terrible?" Marcus thought about it. Would it? He'd spent 18 years without a father. Did he need one now? Want one? Could Charles be that, or would he always be just the man who left, trying to buy his way back with kidneys and flight lessons? "I don't know," he said honestly. "That's okay, you don't have to know, you don't have to decide anything right now." She took his hand. "But Marcus, baby, I need you to know something. If you choose to let him in, even a little, it doesn't betray me. It doesn't diminish what we've been to each other. Love isn't pie, giving some to him doesn't mean less for me." "What about you? Are you going to see him again?" She was quiet for a long moment. He asked, said he wanted to court me properly this time. Can you imagine, at our age, talking about courting? You didn't answer my question. Because I don't have an answer. Part of me wants to run toward him and part of me wants to run away. I'm 55 years old, Marcus. I've been alone for 18 years. I don't know how to be any other way anymore. Maybe that's exactly why you should try. Or maybe it's exactly why I shouldn't. She squeezed his hand. But enough about me. Tell me about this flight school application. Tell me about your dreams. So he did, told her about the essays, the requirements, the possibility of rising above the life they'd known. She listened with the attention she'd always given his dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. When he finished, she was crying. Mom, I'm just so proud of you, so proud of the man you've become, and excited for who you'll be, my son, the pilot. She wiped her eyes. Although I'll never stop worrying every time you're in the air. I'll be careful. You'd better be, you're all I have. Not anymore, Marcus pointed out gently. You have Charles's kidney, that's something. She laughed, surprising them both. Trust my son to find the humor in organ donation. But as she got ready for bed, humming softly in a way she hadn't in years, Marcus knew it was more than the kidney that had brought light back to her eyes. It was possibility, hope, the chance that life at 55 could still surprise you. 2 weeks later, Marcus got the call. He'd been accepted into the cadet program. Full scholarship in exchange for a 10-year commitment to American Airlines. Training would start in 3 months. He sat in his car after the call, staring at the phone like it might take the words back. He'd done it, on his own merit, his own essays, his own determination. The boy from the cargo hold was going to learn to fly. He called his mother first. She cried happy tears this time. Then, surprising himself, he texted Charles, got into the program. The response was immediate. Congratulations, I'm so proud. Proud, such a complicated word from a father who'd been absent. But Marcus found he didn't mind it as much as he'd expected. Maybe pride, like forgiveness, could be earned slowly, built one moment at a time. Thank you, he typed back. Then, after a pause, if the offer's still open, I'd like to learn what you know. Always, came the reply, whenever you're ready. The next 3 months passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus gave notice at work, surprising Ray, who'd apparently grown fond of him in his gruff way. You'll be back, the supervisor predicted. They always come back. But Marcus knew he wouldn't. This was a one-way journey up and out. He was leaving the ground behind. Charles proved to be a careful teacher, respecting boundaries while sharing knowledge. They met at a flight simulator cafe, neutral ground where Charles could teach without overstepping. He showed Marcus how to read instruments, explained the physics of flight, shared the thousand small wisdoms that separated good pilots from great ones. Flying is about trust, he said during one session. Trust in your instruments, your training, your instincts, but mostly trust in yourself. You have to believe you belong in the sky. Did you always believe that? No, for a long time I flew like I was stealing something, like someone would realize I didn't deserve to be there and ground me. He adjusted the simulator's heading. It wasn't until after I left you and your mother that I understood why. I was stealing something, stealing time from where I should have been. But you kept flying. It was all I had left, all I was good at, so I became better, became the pilot I couldn't be as a man. He looked at Marcus. You have the chance to be both from the start, don't waste it. Meanwhile, Denise and Charles continued their careful dance. Dinners became coffee, became walks in the park. Marcus watched his mother bloom under the attention, watched her remember how to be courted, how to be seen as more than a struggling single mother or a kidney patient. She was just Denise again, brilliant and beautiful and deserving of love. He's different, she told Marcus one evening. Or maybe I am. We're both so aware of time now, of how much we've lost. It makes us careful, but also urgent, like we can't afford to waste any more years on fear. Do you love him? Marcus asked. I'm learning to love who he's become, the man who reads philosophy and admits his mistakes and donated a kidney without expecting anything in return. She paused. Is that enough? I don't know, is it? She smiled. You're supposed to be the child here. I'm the one with the answers. I think we ran out of the usual playbook a while ago. The night before Marcus left for flight school, they had a dinner. All of them, Marcus, Denise, Charles, Sarah, and Rebecca. The sisters had slowly warmed to the situation, or at least accepted its reality. They were a strange family, formed by absence and reunion, by kidneys and cargo holds, by 18 years of silence and the words finally being spoken. To Marcus, Charles raised his glass, may you always find clear skies and tailwinds. To second chances, Denise added, looking at Charles with something that might have been love or might have been just forgiveness. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. To weird families, Rebecca contributed, making everyone laugh. To showing up, Marcus said finally. Even when it's 18 years late, even when it's complicated, to being here now. They drank, and for a moment Marcus could see it, the family they might become. Not perfect, not without scars, but present, trying, building something from the wreckage of old choices. After dinner, Charles pulled Marcus aside. I have something for you. He handed over a worn leather bag, the same one Marcus had found that first night, with the initials CAT. I can't take this. It's yours, has been since the day you were born, I just didn't know it then. Charles's voice was rough with emotion. My father gave it to me when I got my wings. I always thought I'd pass it on to. He glanced at his daughters. Well, things don't always go as planned, but it should be yours. The initials even work. Could be Charles Anthony Thompson. Could be something else. Could be choosing another tomorrow, Marcus said, thinking of all the philosophy they'd discussed. Charles smiled. I like that, very existentialist. Still trying to find meaning at altitude. Always, but now I know where to look. He gripped Marcus's shoulder. Fly safe, son, fly true, and when you're up there, remember that you earned it, not because of me, but despite me. That makes it worth more. Marcus left for flight school carrying his father's bag and his mother's dreams. The training was hard, harder than loading cargo had ever been. But every time he wanted to quit, he thought about his mother working double shifts, about 18 years of sacrifice and love. He thought about his father, carrying a photograph and regret for half his life. He thought about choices and consequences and the possibility of rising above them all. 6 months later, he made his first solo flight. As the wheels left the ground, as Chicago fell away beneath him, Marcus understood something fundamental. We all carry weight of expectation, of history, of the choices made for us and by us. But flight wasn't about escaping that weight. It was about learning to lift it, to rise despite it, to find the balance that keeps you airborne. He thought about Sisyphus pushing his rock up the mountain again and again. But from up here, the mountain looked different, smaller, manageable. Maybe that was the secret, not to escape the rock, but to gain enough altitude to see it clearly. Below, his mother would be watching the sky, tracking his flight on her phone. His father would be preparing for his own flight, back in the cockpit after his recovery. His sisters would be living their lives, adjusting to this new branch of their family tree. And Marcus would be here, suspended between earth and sky, between past and future, between the life he'd known and the one he was creating. Banking the plane gently, he turned toward the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and possibility. He had hours of flight time ahead, thousands more to log before he'd be ready for commercial aviation. But he was patient. He'd learned that from his mother, and he was persistent. He'd learned that from loading cargo in the rain. As for what he'd learned from his father, maybe it was this, that it's never too late to choose a different path. That redemption isn't a destination but a direction. That the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. The radio crackled with instructions from air traffic control, and Marcus responded with his call sign, his voice steady and sure. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. The boy from the cargo hold had found his wings. And far below, in a small apartment in Chicago, Denise Thompson sat by the window, watching the lights of planes trace paths across the darkening sky. Beside her, Charles held her hand, both of them looking up, both of them finally understanding that love wasn't just about staying or leaving. Sometimes it was about finding your way back. Sometimes it was about learning to fly. We're coming to the end of our journey together, and if you've stayed with us this long, you've witnessed something beautiful, the power of forgiveness, the weight of choices, the possibility of redemption even after 18 years. This story reminds us that families come in all forms, that father figures can emerge from unexpected places, and that sometimes the very struggles that seem to limit us actually give us the strength to soar. If this tale touched your heart, please consider subscribing and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? What part of Marcus's journey resonated with you? Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that show us versions of ourselves, our own struggles with forgiveness, our own dreams of rising above circumstances. So please join our community, share your location and your thoughts, and remember, it's never too late to spread your wings. The first time Marcus flew as a commercial pilot, his mother was his passenger. It was a short flight, Chicago to Detroit, but it might as well have been to the moon for what it meant. He made the announcement himself, his voice carrying through the cabin. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking." In seat 3A, Denise gripped Charles's hand and tried not to cry. Her baby, her reason for everything, was flying them home. The boy who'd loaded bags in the rain was now responsible for carrying souls through the sky. If that wasn't proof that love and sacrifice could lift you higher than any plane, she didn't know what was. The flight was smooth, the landing perfect. As passengers disembarked, many stopped to shake Marcus's hand, to comment on the smoothness of the flight. He accepted their thanks with grace, but his eyes sought his mother's. "How'd I do?" he asked when she finally made it to the cockpit. "You flew," she said simply. "My boy flew." And in that moment, with his mother's tears of joy and his father's proud smile, with the sun setting over Detroit Metropolitan Airport and another flight to prepare for, Marcus knew that every struggle had been worth it. Every late night, every aching muscle, every moment of doubt. They had all led here to this cockpit, to this life he'd built from the ground up. The intercom crackled with his next assignment. Time to fly again, time to carry more stories through the sky. Marcus Thompson, son of a cargo loader's dreams and a pilot's regret, adjusted his captain's hat and prepared for takeoff. The sky was calling, and he had finally learned how to answer. Some stories end with answers. Others end with beginnings. This one ends with both, a young man in a cockpit, his parents finally together after 18 years apart, and the endless blue sky stretching ahead like all the promises life makes to those brave enough to reach for them. Marcus had loaded his last bag, carried his last burden on the ground. Now he carried people above the clouds, showing them the world from a perspective he'd earned through sweat and sacrifice, and the stubborn refusal to let circumstances define him. And if you looked closely, if you knew where to watch, you could see him sometimes, Captain Marcus Thompson, flying over Chicago, over the apartment where he'd grown up, over the airport where he'd loaded cargo, over all the places that had made him who he was. Flying not away from his past, but because of it, carrying his history like fuel, using it to climb higher and higher into the infinite possibility of sky. The poor boy from the cargo hold had become a pilot. The father who'd left had returned. The mother who'd sacrificed everything had gained more than she'd dreamed. It wasn't a perfect ending, life rarely offers those. But it was true, and it was earned, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. In the end, that's what love does. It lifts us. It carries us. It teaches us to fly even when we've never left the ground. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very brave, it brings us home to people we thought we'd lost forever, showing us that the sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning.